Welcome to this special broadcast produced with the support of the Mediane European program. During the next few minutes, we will be discussing the problem of housing in Ireland and Spain from the perspective of people at risk of losing their homes. Recent years have been marked by the economic crisis in many parts of the world, including Europe. And this situation has created high unemployment rates among millions of people and has generated a problem that is in the increase, especially in Ireland and Spain, home evictions. The loss of income in families might cause a default on the mortgage repayments or rent payments, which might translate into evictions and homelessness. In Spain, the situation is becoming more troubling. Since 2007, 400,000 people have been evicted from their homes. Only in 2013, 67,000 people lost their homes, and there are not many alternatives for those affected. One of these people is Ángel Guzmán. He is 43 years old and originally from Ecuador. He has been living in Madrid, Spain, for the last 14 years. He signed a mortgage loan with the bank Bank to buy his home in 2006. The bank repossessed his home in 2011. Since then, the bank agreed a mortgage to rent scheme with Ángel and his family. They are now living in a different apartment and paying to the bank €150 per month that comes from the family monthly income of €400. This arrangement with the bank is coming to an end in April 2014. Ángel has lost his home, but he still will have to keep up with the mortgage repayments. His initial mortgage was of €217,000. He paid over €25,000 to the bank during 2 years, but his debt, instead of decreasing, has increased. Today, his debt with the bank is of €253,000. He has been camping outside the Bank branch in Getafe, Madrid, for the last 4 months. He called for debt cancellation, and he considers the mortgage was paid when the bank took his home.
Mi nombre es Ángel Guzmán. Soy de Ecuador. Llevo 14 años
My
aquí
name
en
is
España.
Ángel Guzmán. I am originally from Ecuador, but I have been living in Spain for the last 14 years. I bought a home in the year 2006-2007. I got a mortgage from this bank, Bank, and for the last 2 years I have been paying €1,050 monthly as a mortgage repayment. In 2009, the construction crisis happened, and as I was working in a building site, I lost my job, and I couldn't keep up with the mortgage repayments. The week after losing my job, I went to talk to the bank to see whether we could agree to renegotiate the mortgage repayments. I offered to pay €800 per month, but the bank refused. In fact, they offered me a new loan of €20,000 so I could pay all interest generated by the mortgage and the mortgage arrears. But I refused, as I didn't have a job and I didn't want to increase my debt.
The banking crisis has benefited others, the vulture funds. These financial organizations buy bad debt at a discount from other banks and then act as debt collectors. In Spain, one of the most prominent is the Banco Pichincha. This entity from Latin America has purchased debt of Banco Santander among others. One of those affected by this vulture bank is Carlos del Toro, a 40-year-old man from the Mediterranean coast of Spain, who traveled to Madrid to support Ángel. Carlos signed a mortgage loan for €160,000 in 2007, and so far he has paid €5,000. Bank Pichincha bought his debt. Carlos was never informed of this transaction, and he wonders why he wasn't offered to buy his own debt with the discount offered to Bank Pichincha. Carlos wants payment in kind. The bank takes the house and the debt is cancelled. Carlos tells us about some of the abusive requirements attached to his mortgage loan.
Very recently, I learned that my bank ignored my rights as a client when they include in the terms of the mortgage agreement that they would not allow me to rent my house, and that if for any reason I failed or was delayed in one of the mortgage repayments, they could ask for the payment of the total of the mortgage, and failing this, they could repossess my home.
Those affected by the mortgage crisis are not alone. Since 2011, the first support organizations were created among families that were in the process of losing their homes and others who joined in solidarity with them. These organizations are called Platforms of People Affected by Mortgages. Both Carlos and Angel belong to them, but also do Israel and Lara. Israel and Lara don't have a mortgage, but are activists within the Platform of People Affected by Mortgages. Moreover, Lara is on the Truth Commission, a group which investigates who is responsible for the housing and mortgage crisis, as well as providing support for people affected by abusive mortgages.
Las hipotecas que se firman, además, no tienen ninguna...
Some of the mortgage agreements are unsustainable. There are people in the platform that might have made mortgage repayments for the first 3 or 4 years. This shows the financial insecurity of some people who were offered mortgage agreements.
Yo he visto hipotecas firmadas a inmigrantes a 30 años.
I have seen mortgage agreements with repayment over a period of 30 years with people whose residence permit would expire 4 months after the date of the loan was signed. As Lara said, there is collusion between the political and the economic elites to commercialize and sell what is a basic right, the right to a home.
Han utilizado la vivienda y la han puesto como bien de cambio.
Also, we ask, what happens when a person is evicted? There are 2 possibilities, to occupy an empty house or to apply for social housing. However, the problem is that people are now being evicted from social housing in Madrid, because Madrid Corporation has sold all social housing to vulture banks to cover some of his own debt. The Platform of People Affected by Eviction has helped to create a solidarity and safety net among his members. Lara tells us about it. In the platform, people come together. They become friends and in some cases flatmates, as some share houses while waiting for the other person to be evicted. The platform has created a social fabric, a solidarity net that we really needed and didn't exist before. The Platform of People Affected by Mortgages, as well as other social movements such as the 15M, are present in small towns and cities around Spain. In the case of Cienpozuelos, a town near Madrid, there have been some interesting developments, such as the creation of a housing board that brings together social movements and political parties. Mario Espinosa represents social movement 15M on the board.
Nosotros lo que hicimos fue, tuvimos la suerte de que en Izquierda Unida Cienpozuelos colaboramos con partidos.
We are very lucky. The 15M movement has worked with the United Left Party in some occasions in the past, and they decided to propose in the council meeting the creation of a housing body. The proposal was passed with the votes of all the councillors but those from the Conservative Popular Party, who abstained. This evictions board allows civic participation in a public institution because it can propose motions or changes to local government policy through the participating political parties. Sitting at the table, we have all political parties and groups in the town who wanted to be represented. These are the Socialist Party, the Popular Party, United Left, and 2 independent local parties, PIC and CPCI. Social movements participating in this board are 15M and the Residents Association La Plaza, and we also invited Caritas, that have hardly attended any meeting.
Aunque no han hecho acto de presencia, y esto quizá es bueno destacarlo, a Caritas, que ha venido poco, ha venido 3 o 4 veces.
If in Spain there have been an average of 184 daily evictions in 2013, in Ireland 1,350 evictions took place between 2009 and 2012 due to a legal loophole. However, the recent enactment of the Law and Conveyancy Law Reform Act 2013 has effectively removed the loophole and any protection afforded to family homes. So the number of summonses issued by banks seeking to repossess family homes in Ireland have been steadily increasing in the last few months. There are also situations in which families are unable to pay the rental income either to their landlords or to the banks that have repossessed the house and appointed receivers. Unemployment and lack of public housing places citizens with fewer resources in a vulnerable position. This is the case of Gwen Connell, a lone parent with 3 children. She was evicted on 10th of February 2014.
My name is Gwen Connell. I was made homeless on the 10th of February due to rental increase of €400. Since then I've been looking for properties, finding it really, really hard to find a property within the rental limits and that will accept rent allowance. Up until last week we still had nowhere to live. I have 3 daughters and when we left my eldest daughter stayed with my mum, my 2 other daughters, they stayed with her dad and I stayed in a friend's. For a whole month we were separated. It was really, really hard.
Also, Gwen gave us some pointers on how to solve the problem for people in her same situation, claiming that even though there are 9,000 families on the waiting list for social housing, the Irish government will demolish 40,000 unoccupied dwellings already built that are now owned by the state body NAMA.
I think there's an awful lot of properties out there that like the NAMA houses, there's no social housing in Ireland anymore, and there needs to be something done about that because there's 90,000 people on the housing lists. I know that's an awful lot of people in the country waiting on a house. I've been on the list since 17 years now and I've never been offered a house, and I don't know, just more needs to be done on social housing and rent controls.
If we talk about evictions, we need to talk to the Alliance Against Austerity. Here, a spokesperson for the Alliance explained how he sees the housing situation in Ireland.
Okay, well, the situation now is that after the economic crash and the collapse of property prices, the conditions are being deliberately created for a fresh housing bubble, especially in Dublin, where there is now a new shortage of housing of all descriptions. There's a shortage of housing for those who are in a position to buy. There's a shortage of housing for those who need social housing provided for by the councils. And there's a growing demand on private rented accommodation, which is resulting in a rapid increase in the cost of private rent. And that increase in private rent is very acute because the rent allowance payments that the government provide for people who are dependent on social welfare, social security, and it's a subvention for their rent, that has been cut. So higher rents and lower rent subsidies mean that there has been a rapid growth of homelessness in Dublin as well. And some very high profile cases like this one today, where a woman and her 3 children living together, that the landlord wanted an increase of €400, basically bringing the rent up to €1,300 a month for a 3-bedroom house in Dublin. So he virtually made her homeless. She had to leave and with nowhere else to go.
Finally, we talked to Andrew Robinson, a barrister specialized in banking law, a former member of the organization New Beginnings, and who has some experience defending people facing evictions. Andrew also gave us his views on the mortgage crisis and how it came to happen, particularly in Ireland.
Well, it's come in 2 or 3 waves. Back in 2000 and I suppose 2008 and 9, when we had the financial crisis, the banks started to issue proceedings, and it was mostly unlicensed, unregulated subprime lenders, what you'd call them, companies like Start Mortgages, Stepstone Mortgages. They operate without a license. They lent money to people who were at bad credit risk, and in a situation where anyone who applied for a mortgage was getting one anyway. I don't know who these people were who'd been refused, had to go to the subprimes. So they came into court, thousands of cases, and they tried to get orders of the houses. The other banks, the Irish banks, which were in even worse financial state, were slow to issue proceedings. They'd kind of threaten people with court. They might bring you to court once or twice, then pause it for a while, because they didn't really want to repossess houses. They were worried that if they did, they'd repossess a worthless asset and they'd lose a lot of money.
Andrew Robinson believes that the Personal Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act is a welcome improvement for those who are facing mortgage difficulties.
But the real option now is the personal insolvency legislation. You go into the bank and say, you want my home? Well, I'll offer you a personal insolvency arrangement, and if you don't want to take it, I'll go bankrupt. If you take a personal insolvency arrangement, I might get to stay in my house. If somebody has a salary and income, they can stay in their house. The bank will have to write off some of the debt. They will get what the person can afford to pay over 6 years, every month. If they don't accept that, the person can go bankrupt. They can keep their house, and the bank will get what the person can afford to pay over 3 years minus the cost of the bankruptcy. So this is the reason banks aren't pushing people, because if before September last year the banks could push you and push you and push you, and they held the facts were on their side, the law was on their side, and everything was on their side, they could do what they want. But now with the personal insolvency legislation, you don't need to go to court. You can take a personal insolvency arrangement and tell the banks, this is what I have, you either take it or I go bankrupt. And people who do it are coming into me saying that they can see the light at the end of the tunnel getting bigger every day. They feel a great relief. And if a bank isn't being reasonable, and they haven't been reasonable, then, well, you know what? Tough.
This program was produced by Lola Matamala and Sally Galeana as part of the Mediane program. Mediane is a joint initiative of the Council of Europe and the European Union that promotes the production of content in the mass media from a perspective of diversity and inclusion.